Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're here to talk about data transformation. I'm Stephanie Trenzo, and I'm joined by Janet George and Grant Gibson. First, we're going to share some information around our ideas about tri-modal IT. We're going to discuss the data imperative, give you some definitions to understand a common vocabulary, and then we'll give you Oracle's point of view on data transformation with some specifics around paths that you can follow to get started. And then we'll close with some very practical next steps. So you've likely heard about Gartner's concept of bimodal IT, sometimes called two-speed IT. It characterizes the problem that emerged many years ago between systems of record, legacy systems that are regulated by various kinds of governance and have often been architected over time, making them pretty slow to change, and systems of engagement or interaction, which are typically applications, web or mobile, where the users interact, which must really change at the speed of business. Meanwhile, kind of lurking out there is this threat of a third system, the systems of intelligence centered around AI and ML. Typical approaches look at all three of these systems as silos, requiring you to really think about your budget and resourcing allocations in discrete buckets. Our holistic Oracle approach is to consider how you leverage your strategy to bring value to the center of all three of those systems. For example, why should your investment in an ERP system, one of the most important systems in your company, be seen as a cost instead of an investment in future growth? If you unleash that data into a fuller system of intelligence story, now it's part of a system of growth. So today we're going to focus on the lens of data transformation, driving transformation, leveraging decentralized and unstructured data in addition to your structured data to get smarter for business growth. Okay, so what, right? I said earlier, I frequently hear our clients speaking in almost fearful tones, lurking out there about artificial intelligence, machine learning, almost like it's science fiction or very intimidating concepts. But let's start with just the simple idea that you're already interacting with and creating both structured and unstructured data today. Your phone, your smart home devices. Let's take one simple example. If you ask something of Alexa or Siri, and she responds, that's largely structured data formed in intents, programmed conversations. But think about your question. Think about the background noises and sounds. Think about where you're sitting when you ask that question. All of this unstructured data and content is being created by the second. So a little bit of an older anecdote at this point, but to bring it to life, my daughter is now 14, but when she was 10, one of her chores was ensuring there was always 2 extra rolls of toilet paper in the bathrooms. At first, when we ran out of toilet paper, she would check the pantry, and then she would tell me and I would order more, go to the store to buy more. Now we just say out loud to order more toilet paper, and voila, the subscription is magically on the doorstep the next day. So we've been able to design a closed loop supply chain for the toilet paper chore in our house. These kinds of interactions, though this one is an extremely consumer-facing example, illustrate not only what's possible, but what is now expected. So regardless of what business you sit in, this is the lens through which you need to envision your data transformation. So let's talk a little bit about why this matters, right? So AI innovators are the ones who are succeeding. And I know Janet's going to share more about why she believes this to be true, but it's not just our belief, it's a fact. Data transformations are driving top line growth. They are driving revenue. When we looked at our tri-modal lens, you could see that this system really was about growth. It's about futures. It's fueling disruption across all of the industries. And if we look at what has happened over the course of the last year, we can see also why companies who are invested in pursuing their data transformation are the ones who are really coming out of this last year's crisis and pandemic ahead of their competitors. And again, you don't have to take our word for it, that your conversations that you're having out loud with your phone and your smart home devices, that unstructured data is being created exponentially. Look at these graphs. It really tells all the story you need to know about the possible opportunity that is out there if you really take this seriously and look at how you should transform with a data first lens. So let's flip this over to Janet. I'm going to hand it off for her to get into some specifics and take you into the details of what this could mean for your business.
Thank you, Stephanie. When you think about an autonomous enterprise, it is actually powered by AI and ML. Now, clearly, we are in the age of AI, but how do we know this? So the speed at which machine learning is sweeping through the enterprise is accelerating. One data point that we know is the extraordinary penetration of artificial intelligence in the enterprise, which is more than quadrupled since 2017. So the rise of modern AI is a cloud story. It's a story about infrastructure. It's a story about analytical tools, analytical platforms, and data working very cohesively, almost synchronously with each other. And our competition is really capitalizing on this unlimited consumption growth engine. So when you look at the internal landscape of data, it's extremely complicated, right? Historically, data was generated by applications because data lived inside of applications. It was not liberated. But now the sources of data have really exploded, and we can't rely on application as our source of data. As Stephanie mentioned, data is coming from so many different sources: sensor data, or your data from your text messages, unstructured data from the web, product data. And we got to make sense of all of this data and build insights that will actually form intelligence in driving your business forward. So when we think of what are some of the challenges that companies are facing through this transformational journey, most companies start out with a very large and very significant technical debt. They also have a lot of silos. They're plagued by silos. Again, this is historical data sitting in applications, in processes, bound across different companies. And then there are other challenges, like, does the company have organizational alignment, a strategic vision to do a data transformation? Are leaders trained to be stewards of data? What does it look like to be outside the data delivery business, right? I call the data delivery business because you have to go to IT and ask them to write a query for you to get an answer to the question you are seeking out of the data. But in the world of AI, we're really in the self-service mode. We want to ask questions of our data and have access to the data without writing extra queries or long-winded queries. So we need to get out of the data delivery business. So now, one of the foundations as you think about a data-driven architecture is the decoupling of applications and data. We talked about how the data and applications are locked, and we are now finding ourselves to be in multiple application mode, inter-application data transport mechanisms, data coming from many sources. So the revolution really is about data sets and our ability to really mine these data sets to have records of systems where we can actually store these data sets and access them freely, independent of these applications, is going to be the success of the data strategy and data transformation. So what is Oracle's point of view? We have a point of view around data transformations. We think every enterprise will eventually become an autonomous enterprise. AI is an existential threat. It is a genetic marker. We've seen companies grow top-line revenue in the upwards of 40 to 50% lift on a single problem that they've gone out and solved, strategic initiative based on AI. We believe that AI and ML will be cognitive, and it will be pervasive within the organization. Oracle has all the building blocks. We have the foundations that we can put in place to build this autonomous enterprise. We have all of the analytic tools that you can use. We have the cloud infrastructure. These things are instrumental to getting that AI strategy in place. And almost the first step you have to think about is, how can your data be a first-class citizen within the enterprise? How can you free it from the constraints of the application and then make it accessible. That accessibility layer has to come into being. You cannot access your data only via the application. You need ability to access it beyond application, through application, and around the application. And then you can do this via centers of excellence. So you can establish an AI center of excellence or analytical center of excellence, start with a small problem, build a strawman capability, and then start to get out of the data delivery business. So let's take a look at Oracle's big data platform and AI platform. Oracle has spent many, many years putting together, we're in the data business for a long time now, and we've started putting together, we have all of the building blocks, if you will, for this AI center of excellence. We can bring your data sources together. We have many technologies to help you with the migration of data, the streaming of data, be it batch data or be it near real-time data. We have an object store, we have data lake, we have our autonomous data warehouse where we can provide access to your data. We have our data science platform, so we can do very advanced data mining. We can bring in many different open source tools from different open source tools related to AI and machine learning. And then finally, we have our visualization. We have analytics, Oracle Analytics Cloud, where you can visualize your data. You can put your retrospective reporting side by side with your predictive analytics and your predictive reporting, and you can create your dashboards so you can seamlessly operationalize your AI projects and your AI strategic initiatives. And then I want to conclude by saying, when you start on this journey, you really have to assess your maturity. If you are at a maturity level of 1 or 2, then you have to move slowly towards a maturity level of 3 and 4. In your maturity level of 3 and 4, you have actually embraced the adoption of cloud. You have actually embraced the adoption of modern platforms and technologies. You are able to capture many different sources of data. You can seamlessly work through schemas. You can seamlessly work through different types and kinds of data, whether you capture that data near real time or you capture that data in a batch mode. And then you can get to the integrated analytics that you can build out of the preparation and the capture process of the data. So now you can get into advanced techniques, predictive analytics. You can look at the data. Traditionally, we've also looked at the data in a single dimensional view. And as you bring science and you bring these modeling capabilities into your data analytics, you can start to look at the data in a multi-dimensional mode. So you get the full facet of your data and the analytics vision of that data. Okay, and now I will turn it on to Grant.
Thanks, Janet. So as Stephanie said, we started with a view of the potential. What is possible with these things? And then I think we scratched the surface of the technical as to how Oracle can play a portion in any company solution. And I'm here to ground it in the practical, that knowing what we know about where we could go and what the options are, what do you actually do about that? And like Janet said, the first thing you really need to do as a company is to know thyself. Where are you on your data transformation journey? In talking to a variety of companies out there, we find they tend to fall into one of these 3 buckets. 1, they're not on the path. They're neophytes. They have not yet begun this sort of journey. 2, they're on the journey, but they're facing significant and what may feel like impossible to overcome obstacles, struggling on the path. And then 3, where we all want to get to, is that they're on the path, they're finding value, and the challenge is just capacity and throttled on what they can achieve with the continued execution of what they're already doing. So those we find that are not yet on the path, I think, have seen presentations like this. They've heard that AI is coming. They've seen it in other places, perhaps in their industry, perhaps not in their industry, but it's unclear how they would do this inside their own company. They may be used to a level of success on a current approach, or just focus on the day-to-day of running a business versus thinking about AI in the cloud. One of the markers I find for this, where it feels true, is that data is viewed as a byproduct of business activities. It is something that is thrown off by apps or processes. It's generally structured. Company's appetite for it is generally a review of historical. Some poor guy has to go grab a bunch of numbers from some source and combine them with some other source in order to do some ad hoc analysis. I have been that poor guy. And to reference back to those three pillars, I would say that there's no consistent enterprise level approach to data capture or infrastructure. It's all ad hoc and siloed. The good news is that there aren't incumbent answers in place, and the bad news is there's no incumbent answers to build upon. These are folks who are just starting to figure it out. We'll come back to what to do, but if that feels like you, there's some pretty easy steps to get you started. The next group, I would say, are folks that understand the potential and have tried to do that within the company, but they're struggling, right? They have a defined approach to data capture and infrastructure. They have made some investment, but now there's executive hand-wringing because that investment is not yet generating the ROI. We dumped all this money in this team, we dumped all the money in the product, and yet sales are exactly the same as they were. What do we do about this? There's, inside the company, data is viewed as potential, but there's still disparate pockets. There are those that are advocates and on board and see the potential, and there are those that are resistant to it. There isn't yet this embrace of data as a first-class citizen. Another marker for this group is doing AI on your BI data. You try to take a step forward in the analysis capabilities of the company, but you're really just trying to do a better analysis of the same old data that your company was throwing off previously. And they haven't yet flipped that switch to understanding the true potential of data and how to aggressively capture it to fuel value into the company. So that would be the main difference between the second and the third group, is that this third group has figured it out. They've got the fully formed ecosystem across infrastructure capture and analysis. There's a clear line of sight for money in and money out. It's often top line driven, it's revenue associative, it's not cost reduction only. And the real switch that gets flipped is data is viewed as the key driver of the company's value proposition. You start designing processes to capture the right data at the right point in time in your business decisions in order to make those data-driven decisions. It's not backward-looking, it's not structured, it's forward-looking, it's predictive, it's novel data sources. And the thing that can be a blocker for this type of company is that really the bottlenecks are in capacity, right? There may be an enterprise-level approach that everyone is queuing up to get access to. You simply don't have enough of this capability to go around. Whether it's storage or compute constraints or partisan analyst expert constraints, it's really, everybody loves it, you just need more. And every company's journey is unique, and there's no one-size-fits-all skew answer to any one of these companies, but there's a general framework we would look at for how to assess the decisions you face as you walk this path. And that would be, in any one of these states, you have kind of the left and the right path. The left path towards making a tolerable, what might feel like smaller incremental investment and decision, and the right path being a holistic, go big decision. Most companies don't find themselves on the right path, no pun intended. If you have found yourself there, congratulations. You should attack the problem at a whole with a view of where you want to get to. Most often what we find is that leaders inside of companies do face P&L constraints, do face ROI constraints, do have to win over skeptics on this journey. And the decisions you make are going to be incremental decisions, but they should be incremental decisions in view of where you want to end up holistically. You should be making scalable, future-proofed architecture decisions. You shouldn't view these as a series of one-off whole projects. You should be building those projects towards a vision of where you want to get to. So to call back to what we're thinking about with the three types of companies, for those that have not yet started on the path, it's probably easiest to lead with some sort of analytics first solution without a heavy requirement from an infrastructure or capture solution. That's okay if you're just going to nibble off and understand just consolidated approach to enterprise data is a big step for a lot of companies. And you don't need fancy math and whiz-bang tech to get value out of that if that's where you are. If, however, you've done that and you're on the path and you're finding pockets of effectiveness, but it's not consistent, well, then there's more of a need to unify the data through infrastructure and capture. And if you found that you're working successfully, what you really need to tend to is scale. And scale is where cloud excels over other options. You can contract and expand really any component you want to in order to address the needs of the business.
But don't worry, you don't need to do this all on your own. If you're interested in having us partner with you to come up with a strategy on how to think about which path you're on, we have a signature approach to thinking through the hundreds, maybe thousands of decisions and variables that you need to consider for your overall cloud evolution, including your data transformation. We bring this to life with you in a few-hour virtual workshop that we call Hello, and we aim to make it not only insightful, but really fun. So we look forward to hearing from you and exploring how we can shape the future together. Thanks for joining us today.